So first of all, Jay, thanks very much for giving us the opportunity to have a short chat with you about your business and experience using simulation. I know it will be really valuable for everyone listening to hear from someone that has been through the process of implementing simulation, and also to understand what the potential benefits are. So thanks very much for making yourself available. Before we get into the detail, just to kick things off, can you just briefly introduce yourself, Jay, and tell us a little bit about your company, what services you offer, and what sectors you operate in?
Sure. My name is Jay. I am the founder of a company called Bigger Boat Solutions Limited, and I do primarily metal forming and most aspects of die engineering. 95% of my work is in the automotive sector, but I do forming simulation for appliances and buses and pretty much electronics, almost anything. Metal forming is sort of metal forming. It doesn't really matter what sector you're in. It's all the same thing. I was saying I started in 2010, right after the automotive crash. I got tired of hunting around for a job from different tool shops. So I said, to hell with it. I'm going to start my own shop. And that's what I did. And I've been going on since then.
Right, well, it's brave to start your business just after that crash, but you're still here, so you must be doing something right there. Thanks for giving us a bit of an introduction in terms of what you do. Now I know you've been using simulation for a while now, but if you can sort of cast your mind back, what were some of the challenges that you might have faced either within the business when you started up or in previous jobs prior to actually using simulation on your projects?
The tool shop that I worked for most of my career initially was very hesitant to get into simulation because they didn't trust it. How could a computer predict what metal's going to do when you form it? There's too many variables. It's too complicated. It was sort of a black magic art, tool making. And then little by little, I pushed the owners of the company to try it. And then once that happened, they never looked back. It cut down cycle times. It improved accuracy. It made the whole process of designing and troubleshooting and buying off the tools substantially easier.
Yeah. Okay. So it's just a case of, I guess, proving the solution to the management team in terms of, actually that it is accurate and it will do what it says on the tin. And then you're sort of saying after you managed to get over that hurdle, it made sense. We hear that a lot in terms of what we're doing, and there will be many people listening perhaps to the call that haven't invested in simulation yet. It's useful to hear that your method was sort of to validate the results, which got them to invest in the simulation. How did you go about doing that? Did you sort of look to simulate something that you'd already formed and therefore you knew what the defects were? How did you sort of build confidence in the accuracy of the solution with the management team?
So it started with simulating projects that we had finished. We knew what the problems were. We knew what the results were. We knew how much spring back we needed. We knew what we had to do. So I would run those and show them, look, the simulation is predicting exactly what we ended up with for these jobs. That was the first step. And the second step was I would simulate things, and they wouldn't really want to use the results straight away. So we would still simulate it, have the results in our back pocket, and then manually sort the tool out and get it to work. And then we would compare the simulation results to what we did in real life, and they correlated. Once that phase was done, we simulate and go by those results all the time. And today that's critical. You can't not simulate today. You have to. The parts are too complicated. Timelines are too compressed. You need to have simulation to get into the tool with as few problems as possible when you do your first hits.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I do have a question later on just to elaborate on how you see simulation in the marketplace. So I'll come back to that one. There are obviously a number of forming simulation tools out there. Some people on the call today or listening to this perhaps already have simulation in place, or some people might be looking into simulation and have lots of options on the table. So I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about why you decided to actually partner with Altair for forming simulation, and whether there was anything, I guess, specific about Altair and its products that sort of gave you the confidence that it was the right solution for your business.
So during the course of my career, I've pretty much used all of the forming solutions that exist out there today. I'm not going to ramble them off and give, free airtime to the competitors, but I've used them all. And when I was starting my company, I tried them all to see what would best fit for me in terms of how I worked and my workflow and how I did things. And there are good and bad aspects to all simulation packages. If they're used correctly, yes, they're all going to work. But in the end, Altair's solutions were the best combination of accuracy, functionality, and cost for doing metal forming. And also because they have such a large suite of products, I used their products in ways that no one ever expected them to be used because I could.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. And I guess I guess just to make that clear, obviously what you're talking about there is the fact that when you buy into Altair, you might have a particular use case for simulation, which in this case might be forming simulation. But what you're saying is there's a whole plethora of other tools in the Altair product suite that you can leverage through the units-based system, which actually means that you've got a vast sort of set of products which you can utilize, maybe not instantly, but as you sort of progress with Altair, you can use more and more of their technology, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the way it would work is I would run across a problem I needed to solve, and I wasn't quite sure how to do it. So I've got a very close relationship with Altair Canada. So I would call them and say, Greg Delbridge is the one I usually bugged about this. I would call him and say, I have this problem to solve. Is there something in Altair suite of products that will allow me to solve this problem? And an hour later, he's like, you could do this, 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 and this. I'll write you a quick script, and here's how your problem is solved. And, we tweaked it as we go, but they're very good at solving problems, I'd say. Their support is good at solving problems and thinking, I don't like the term outside the box, but they're thinking creatively to use other things from their product suite to solve metal forming issues that you don't think you're going to run and come up against, but you do throughout the time of using it.
Now, you've alluded it to a bit earlier, and I just wanted to sort of come back to it, because one of the things that you spoke about, Jay, was that simulation is an absolute necessity. And you'd mentioned the complexity of the parts, and I think you mentioned the cycle times as well. And interestingly, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was, do you feel that simulation has differentiated your business in the marketplace, perhaps in terms of organizations that might not be so advanced or might not even use simulation? Or would you actually say that, no, it's not differentiated my business because it is just a necessity? And if you want to get those large orders or want to work with larger OEMs, you just absolutely must be using simulation anyway.
Yeah, simulation has not differentiated me because you must be using it. Everyone across the board. It's required for 99.9% of all parts need simulation, as even if they're a dead simple L bend for some reason. And that's just the way it is. So everyone needs to be using simulation. What differentiated me was the things I could do with Altair products that people with other solutions couldn't. I can give you an example I can give you an example of one big one. So in many cases, if you've got a forming, say a generic part, you're forming it, and you're in the press bluing it in. You've got areas where there's the tool steel is too close together because you've got compression, or you're getting a lot of thinning, so you've got a larger gap, and you're not hitting the part true. I worked with Greg Delbridge from Altair Canada, and we worked out a way to take the thinning results of the simulation and then map it back onto surfacing, so I can then modify surfacing to take the thinning distribution into account, cut that into the tool, so you hit more true than you would with just straight away cutting the nominal or whatever sprung back compensated surfaces. I'm now taking thinning compensation into consideration, not just like spring back.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's what you're saying to summarize is that everyone should be using simulation, but actually you've been able to, I guess, use different tools and techniques to almost allow you to deal with a greater level of complexity, and I guess bring more accuracy in terms of what you're doing in terms of simulation. So that's really interesting. And I think still some businesses aren't using this type of simulation. So I wonder why that might be the case. Is it more that because you're working predominantly in the automotive sector and that they dictate that simulation must be done? Or is it actually you're saying, across sector, everyone should be using it?
Automotive is dictating it, so it has to be done. It wasn't dictated so much across other sectors, but it is being used now because they see the benefits of doing it. The tools are better, the product is better. There's no doubt about it anymore. It's not like it's a new technology you have to prove out. It's well developed, well understood, and everyone knows it just works.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. There is one more question. I know we're running out of time, but there was one more question. I mean, clearly you've been using simulation for a while, so you've got the technology knowledge, and you clearly understand the process of forming. So you've got I guess process expertise in addition to simulation expertise. Many people might want to start using simulation more. Companies might want to be rolling out simulation to more members of the team, where those people might be process experts in terms of forming, but they might not be too familiar with actually using simulation tools. So do you think people with process knowledge, but not necessarily experts in simulation, would be able to utilize a tool like Inspire Form, with the right training?
I think it's more important to have process experience than actual computer simulation experience. If you understand how the tool works, how to get metal to flow, why things do what they do, learning the mechanics of running simulation software is the easy part. Understanding tooling, I think, is much more important. Inspire Form is that easy to use.
That's quite interesting, because we speak to people in our business that have an awful lot of process knowledge and actually feel like, compared to people with a high level of technical proficiency in terms of software, that those people will be at a disadvantage because they've never really used it before. But from what you're saying, those people will probably be able to be more effective with simulation technology because of that process expertise rather than vice versa. So I think that's
exactly right.
Quite an interesting point, and I'm not sure I've heard it positioned in that way, but it does make a lot of sense. So look, I think that's all we've got time for today, Jay. Thanks very much for answering the questions today and telling the people a little bit about how you've been using it. I think it would have been really useful for those that have been listening. I'm sure if anyone does have perhaps additional questions for you, Jay, you know, I'm sure they can probably contact you through LinkedIn, perhaps, or your website, maybe.
Yep,
For
that's
them
fine.
to get in touch. Brilliant. So
Sure.
we'll perhaps make those details available. But yeah, once again, thank you very much for your time, and have a great day.
You too. My pleasure. Have a good day.
Thanks, Jay.